And so we came up from air on that. And I wish when he came home from work, I had just said hi and hello instead of just being buried in a computer. Like it takes 2 seconds to just be like, hey, how was your day? And then going back to my, like, hey, I need to finish up this email. I'll come hang out in a minute. I just want to say hi. I didn't do things like that. And I wish I hadn't, because I think that is a downfall in those of you that are in relationships. I hear that in coaching. My husband I'm always on the computer. He's always, come hang out with me. That's the first sign right there. When your husband or your partner is saying, hey, come hang out with me, that is the first sign. And if you're not hearing it, just be ready for the fall.
Hey everybody, this is Eddie Babbage, founder, CEO of Timeline Genius, your host here of the Wedding Industry Insider Podcast, back with another great episode for you. I'm here with none other than Amber Anderson. Amber is the owner of Refine for Wedding Planners, which provides educational resources and community support for wedding planners. She's also, she was the founder of Heavenly Day Events, which was a wedding planning company that she ran for years. Also the co-founder and a former board member of the Associated Wedding Planners of Austin. And as a coach, speaker, and writer, Amber teaches wedding planners how to refine their business so they can be successful and enjoy what they do. Amber, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview here with me today.
Of course. I always love spending time with you. So thanks for having me. And if you're tuning in by watching, I apologize. You're going to have to watch me in 12 different shades of lighting today, because for some reason, and Eddie's already seen it, for some reason my light I'm green, and then I'm yellow, and then I'm bright and dark. I don't know. So we're going to go with the flow today.
Amber, it really is a pleasure to connect with you. And, I feel like I said this in the pre-interview, you're one of those folks that I've known for years. And, the years just kind of, the calendar pages just flip quickly. And, you just look up and like, wow, has it really been 6-7 years since this or that time? But yeah, it really always is a pleasure to connect with you. I know what you're doing for our industry. And I just want to kind of give people a really quick preview here of some of the important things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about breaking up with busy, which I think is a really powerful concept. I know it's something that means a lot to you. And we're also going to talk about the idea of handling emergencies, which any wedding planner, I don't care how good you plan, I don't care how good your timeline is, things are going to come up that are beyond our ability to anticipate. And we're going to talk about how to handle that. But before we get into all of that, can you just give people, especially those that may not yet know you, a little bit more of a sense of your background and how you got to be where you currently are?
Yeah. So I actually have a background and degree and some early years of my career spent in health. And when the Great Recession hit, I got the nearest desk job, kept my head down, survived 7 rounds of layoffs, and I decided I didn't like a desk job. So I did all that I could in that company to work my way over to corporate events, because it just meant then I could move around. Like I was moving all day, walking the building and whatnot. And this was in Chase Tower in Dallas, Texas, a huge building. And that's when I started with events. It was all by accident. And then after my husband and I got married a few years later, I realized I liked the social side of things. I really loved planning the wedding, and I had help doing that as well. But I learned a lot and met a lot of folks in the industry. And so I jumped ship, started a business, and started planning weddings. And haven't done corporate since, but I have an experience in both. And so for the last, that was in 2007 when that all kicked off. So I've been around the block a little bit. And in I was telling Eddie this in the pre-interview. I asked him, like, do you remember when I sold Heavenly Day, my planning company? It was January of 2020. And it felt a little like fraudulent, almost like inside secrets or something. I felt but then that the company did really well. It weathered it really well because it'd been set up properly. And so I took a lot of what worked well with that and have applied it to a lot of what I coach. And I acquired Refine in 2018. I grew up with Refine. I was one of the original members. And So it was an honor to acquire it in 2018 and go full time with it in 2020. And, you know, a lot of people will say they want their educators to still be doing weddings. Some people don't care. And I have a perspective that by being removed from it, I can be a little more objective. I'm not being beat up by clients all the time. And also, by coaching a client in Chicago on a Monday and coaching a client in Miami on a Tuesday, I can share the perspectives that they never would have connected the dots over, and are able to grow and expand in ways like that. I've got my ears to the ground in a different way.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. It's funny. I almost feel, even though I would never hold myself out remotely as a wedding industry educator, I am a student of business, and I will say, over the last 11 years doing Timeline Genius, that same phenomenon applies. Like I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of planners, and I've heard the issues and heard how some people are navigating them, and there is something to that sort of bird's eye vantage point.
Yeah, and the way you said an educator of business is that's it. That's what we.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
there's a place for those that are, you know, still in it with clients and can be teaching that side of things, and there are folks that have a business sense that they're willing and able to share. And the the business that my husband and I have grown off to the side is, you know, a multi-million-dollar business. So I'm in the room with big contracts and with big lawyers and city permits, and so I'm getting that perspective too that I'm able to share.
yeah. I love that, Amber. I mean, that's been, and maybe I'm biased because of my own sort of business background, but I feel like that's something that's a really beautiful gift to give to our industry, which is not at all to diminish the importance of being able to plan a great wedding. But,
Right.
it's that Michael Gerber E-Myth notion that, like, if you have a wedding planning business, you can't just think of yourself as just a wedding planner. Yeah, you better be a great wedding planner. Otherwise, you're not going to get business. Like, that's for sure. And you need to constantly, like, hone your craft and improve. But there's this other huge set of,
Mm-hmm.
issues and challenges that really are more just in line with being a business owner. And you've certainly seen,
Mm-hmm.
that from a
Well,
lot of different angles.
I think a lot, for better or for worse, right? There are pros and cons to everything I'm about to say. So disclaimer, this is like I get that. I think that, you know, so many of us that come into the wedding industry have an origin story of creativity, and I did this for fun and my friends recognized it and I realized I needed to get paid for it, and just like an origin of like a creative talent,
Yeah.
and that flourished into getting paid for it. And as it should be, right? Like if we're going to be offering a service, whether it's for fun and we love it or not, like let's get paid.
Yeah.
And but but by and large, a lot of us don't have that business mindset. There are left brains and right brains for a reason. Our world would not work if
Yeah.
we didn't have creative
Yeah.
folks and didn't have the left brain folks, right? But it's really hard to operate a creative business under like when we have to have both. We
Yeah.
have to we have to integrate that left and right brain somehow, connect those, and that can be really hard. And that's really a left brain. Like my husband is so left brain, right? And I got new curtains 2 days ago. He hasn't even noticed yet. Whereas a wedding planner would walk in and notice in 2 seconds.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you know, then I've got I'm over here changing out color palettes in my house all the time, and like don't give me an Excel sheet, right? Like
Yeah.
I but we work well together,
Right.
and over time we've taught each other a lot of things. And I think that honestly too, like going into the busy aspect of this conversation, is where I think a lot of us in this industry get overwhelmed, because we we take on all these clients because that's the fun part and that's the creative part, but then we also have to run the business, and then where's the time to do both? And so we have to balance that, and determine what of those things do we enjoy, what of those things should we outsource. And if fiscally outsourcing is not an option or a mindset or a desire, then is it responsible to take on 30 weddings a year? Is it responsible, or is it, hey, let's dial and manage 5-10 weddings a year so I don't have to run a business too? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick sort of throwback plug here for people, anybody that missed your first interview, it was episode 61. and it says Amber Anderson empowers you to know and act on your worth. That conversation, you can find it on blog.timelinegenius.com or in the podcast archives. To this day, like I'll never forget that interview. That was just really powerful stuff. Just kind of giving, bolstering like the self confidence, self
Mm-hmm.
esteem, and self worth for wedding planners. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. And I think there's another message here, Amber, and you already kind of started segueing and talking about it. It's one that I think is going to be, just really good and healthful for people to hear. And it's the way you dub it. I like it. You say breaking up with busy. First of all, you built a course around this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
I did.
why, out of all the things you could be channeling, your past experience in education into, teaching about, why did you choose the topic of breaking up with busy for your course?
I think it's a phrase that we can all resonate with, whether we're applying it to our lives or not. I think it's something that we all struggle with and can see is a need and is it a boundary, right? Like we may or may not know how to accomplish it, but we know like we're too busy. And I think we all, and I don't want to say all, those are absolutes. I don't like
Right.
using absolutes. I try not to use them. But, a lot of us during 2020 when the world slowed down, we valued that and we committed to, hey, as I re-enter the world, I'm going to re-enter it intentionally and I'm going to re-enter it with balance. And did we? Like I did. And I have experienced so much freedom from doing that, but I'm watching everyone else around me just live in overwhelm, and I'm like, but we know the answer, we lived it, and here we are completely forgetting all about that. And so that's one reason. The other reason goes back to the business experience. And a minute ago, I worded it like off to the side. We built this multi-million-dollar business. No, no, no. This is like an empire in Austin, and it's not a side business. This is what my husband runs. I think I belittled that a minute ago. So I want to be very clear about, you know, the the meaning of this business and the things that I've been able to learn, and the mentors who I like Gary Keller, and like I mean like big business names have spoken into how we run our business and into refine and things like that. And so all of them, I will use that absolute, all of these business giants will tell you they either, Steve Jobs on his deathbed talked about this. I did it wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I did not experience life. I have these regrets. All of them will tell you, I should have done it this way. I should have been more intentional. And the ones that do, that are experiencing life as a CEO at 5 to 10 hours a week, like that's the point. That's the dream. That's the vision. And it's possible. And they're off spending 2 months in Colorado in the summer, January in Utah skiing or whatever, and their businesses are running themselves. And a solid, successful business is one that can run and operate without the owner or the president or the CEO always being present. And that takes a minute. You have to set it up properly. There is hustle and grind involved in that. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. It can. And I think that we have this misconstrued definition of success locked up and tied into the word busy. When we define success as being busy, I'm booked, I'm busy, I'm successful, I've got all these clients, and
Mm-hmm.
like booked and busy is not a badge of honor. And it might be if it's delegated and outsourced, and there's a team involved, and all of that, and everyone's well rested and no one feels the burden of all of it, that might be a badge of honor. But I think we, in a time of social media, there's so much consumption. There's a world of overconsumption, and there's a world of imposter syndrome. And, I look over here and I'm like, oh, this planner is doing this, and oh, they're so successful. And what I have come to find out, and I've seen this in coaching, I kid you not, where uh, there were several planners in the same city by chance that I was coaching in the same week individually, and each one of them was talking about how, I'm looking at so and so and they're just killing it and they're crushing it, and I happen to talk to so and so the next call, and they said the
Wow.
same thing about the person I had just talked to.
Wow.
they're crushing it, and like all these optics are getting us
Right.
in trouble.
Right.
And I think for me, my experience is that when I run my business in the way that works for my life, I see more success. And sometimes that's in the form of dollars, and sometimes that's in the form of emotional well being. And in those seasons when it's more emotional well being versus dollars, like the dollars just don't seem to matter as much. They do, budgets matter. But when we see these little dips, I don't get as stressed as I see fellow business owners get, because I understand and I have the priority and joy of life going on in the background. Like, you know what? I'm enjoying life right now, and I don't let that burden me, and know that things will always do this. They'll always go up and down. Whereas other people I find just like live in the stress of that,
Yeah.
because they're so tied to dollars and busy and success and booked and optics. And that's not an easy thing to to break free from. And that's why I created that course, because it goes through the whole process, and there's a lot of layers to it, and there's a lot of things to study in your business to identify, like if, when, how that can be done, and what it's going to take, and if that's an appropriate decision for your business and your lifestyle and your family and you as an individual. There's so many questions to ask and things to study. You don't just rip the band-aid off and do it.
How do you know? I mean, there are a few questions. Like, one is this high level sort of philosophical orientation of like, we all know at the end of the day that hard work, drives success, right?
Right.
Like, there's no like, yeah, you just like relax your way to being like super successful. Like, and at the same time, I will say for me, and my past experience, like investment banking, corporate law, like, law school, like there was like really intense, there's an ethos and a culture of like hard driving. It's a badge of honor if you can say you pulled an all-nighter at the office. Like, but at this point in my life, I really do prioritize sleep and rest and time with my family. I've got two kids, and like, I'm not my best self. And, I'll still
Right.
do it if I have to. If there's an emergency, we can, but like, I'm not my best self. I'm not showing up, making the best decisions if I'm under rested. So how do you kind of balance that? How do you know when to be in the hard drive mode and hustling like you acknowledged
Mm-hmm.
versus when am I being kind of unhealthy here and being busy instead of productive? Like, how does somebody sort all that out?
Yeah, I think that this answer is going to vary for people depending on where they are in life. Finances have a factor in that answer. Support systems have a factor in that answer. I It's not lost on me that I have a good support system. It's not
Right,
lost on me that I have a dual income home. It's
right,
not lost on me that I have a peace of mind about an inheritance coming our
right,
way at some point, right?
right,
Like I acknowledge that that is an absolute privilege, and something that does allow me to live with less worry. I did grow up under the line of poverty, and it wasn't until about 30 that I experienced any kind of relaxation in that. So I'm the first in my generation. We're the first in our family to experience any kind of the inheritance coming from my in-law side. On my side, we're the first. I don't know. I am my parents' retirement plan. Like, so great. I'm gonna have an inheritance. I'm gonna spend it on my parents. Quite frankly, so I acknowledge all of that, and I understand and know the worries that I felt for many years even as an adult, not having that. So I think I can speak into both of it, but I think a lot of it, like our bodies tell us. Um, I think most of America, and that's a big word. Going back to absolutes. Most of America is experiencing some sort of inflammation in their body, and fatigue, and stress, and insomnia, and gut issues, and anxiety, and all of these things, and it and we want to call it those things. We want to call it anxiety and stress and fatigue, and a lot of it is really our body's shutting down because we're not resting, we're not drinking
Right.
water, we're not eating properly, and we're not balancing our work life properly. And, we chase all of these things. We chase the massages, we chase the salt baths, we chase, um, you know, all the little self-care things, and we spend millions and trillions of dollars on that, and we don't just take the dog for a walk and touch grass and look up at the sky. And that's what doctors have been telling us for years and years and years, like, just go outside and like breathe and calm down. Like, so our bodies are telling us this, but also, I think knowing what your enough point is part of this conversation too, because, and I'll attribute this to Jenna Kutcher. I'm gonna, this is, I'm sure this is an organic idea for a lot of people, but I heard the enough point language from Jenna. So Jenna Kutcher talks about how we will always hustle and we will always grind because we are entrepreneurs and we are visionaries and we are, you know, idea people that have goals, and we get a rush out of checking that box. Like, that feels good to us. It's like this drug to us. And, let's say day one, I say by year 10, I'm going to have accomplished all these things. And we do, that feels awesome. And we maybe even have accomplished more than we set out to do. So then at year 10, that should be our enough point. Like, live the dream.
Right.
But so many of us hit year 10 and then add another 10, 15 years of, well, now I can do this. I accomplished this, and now I know I can do hard things. I'm going to do this. And we just never live in what we set out to live in the first place. So when you've arrived to your, like, define your enough point, and then when you arrive to it, pause, enjoy it for a minute. And maybe it is a season. Maybe you just enjoy it for a year or two, and then you go out and you hustle again on something else. Or maybe you say, you know what, this is just my infinite enough point, and this is how I'm going to live life. So I'm not sure that we always just know so much as we make active choices before we hit those things and say, hey, I'm going to be paying attention to my life. And when I start to feel these certain things, or I start to see these certain metrics, I'm going to assess, and I'm going to make decisions around that. And you're in control. You get to decide. But if the finances are there, if the time is there, if the support is there, then consider it and explore it.
So what do I do, Amber, if I am, say, a wedding planner right now, and there's not much, it's not a fuzzy thing. Like, and you and I both know there are a lot of people, business is stressful, compounded with wedding planning, which is also stressful. I mean, you can get
Right.
this sort of perfect storm of stress and worry and anxiety and all the things that you kind of mentioned. Let's say I'm listening to this right now, I'm a planner, and I really know that I'm past my sort of my happy medium of like work
Right.
life balance. Like, what can I do to break up with busy? Like, what steps do you advise? Because it sounds easy. Like, it's easy for me to say don't
Yeah.
be stressed, but like that person who's like, but I got to make money and I've got business and I need to get more business and I got to take care. Like, what do you say to help that person start to break up with busy?
Yeah. I think it starts with identifying time wasters. And, in this course, I've got worksheets for all the things that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But identifying time wasters and what are the things that I'm saying yes to that I don't really need to say yes to. And this isn't just business, this is personal life too, because, as small business owners, we need to remember that everything that we say yes to in our personal life impacts the things and the time and the bandwidth and mental load that we have for running our business. And the things that we say yes to in business also directly impact that of bandwidth in our personal life. Like, we as small business owners, that is all directly connected. And I think that's something that's often overlooked. And so when I say yes to, the fun social event on Saturday, and I already had a commitment on Sunday, and I look up and realize, gosh, I haven't had a whole day. I haven't had any rest this week. That's overwhelming to me. Or if I've, so identifying the time wasters, and that may even be the efficiency and how we do things on the computer, how we, how we stack our meetings with clients. I'm a big believer in stacking stuff. Like, try to get all your calls on one particular day. And that's not perfect, right? Like, that's not going to always work, but as much as you can, point people towards timeframes that are already going to like eat that day, for example, and then have a full day of computer work set aside. And So being efficient and intentional about things like that, also understanding how your own brain and mind work and setting your environment up for that success, and be communicative to those around you. So for me, for example, when I know I need to be in focus mode, I communicate to John, my husband, who can work from home or at his office or whatever, like, hey, I really do need the house to myself on this particular day. I've got these things going on. And we just talk about that stuff. And so we set our environment up for success and support each other in that way. And that's not always possible. It is what it is. We have to work around each other. And sometimes their school gets canceled. Last week, it got canceled unexpectedly, and I just had to deal with it, So, but because I build bandwidth and because I am intentional, those days don't throw me off as much as they used to.
Right.
Because I have space for it.
Were you able to build this in, like when you were a wedding planner and you were running your own business? How did you kind of battle this fight against, unnecessary busyness and activity and stress? Like when you were actually a planner, how did you apply some of these principles?
Well, I almost lost my marriage over my busyness. And so to me, it was, I had to make a choice. And if anyone could hear, one of the things I'm really passionate about as an educator is young mothers. And I know we're not all young mothers out here that are listening, so don't come at me. I'm just talking about this one thing for a second. I'm really passionate about that demographic because it's when I experienced some of the darkest seasons of my life, and I had to make some choices or I was literally going to lose it all.
Tell me about that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That could be the case for other people in other demographics, have nothing to do with marriage or motherhood. We all hit our walls in certain ways. Like we're going to let ourselves go. We're going to, whatever it is. And I had to decide, and that was motivation for me. And I would love for people to hear that before they hit that. There's no reason to hit it. I'm a learn the hard way kind of person, or I used to be. But something that happens when you're 41 is you realize that there are mountains and valleys in life, and what goes down, usually comes up, and what goes up isn't always forever. And so when you're living in the glory days, just remember it can disappear tomorrow. So what does that mean? Plan ahead. Be ready for when it dips down. Put savings away. It's easier the older I get to feel less stressed about those things because I know nothing lasts forever. And that's easier said than done. And I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life, so I'm not dismissive of people in hardship. Like that's kind of the definition of my life, quite frankly. But it's still an attitude that I can have and find to carry me successfully through like mindset stuff. And I think that, that it's not always, there's not always going to be a motivating moment like that. But you have to know what you want your life to be and decide, are you on that path or not?
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
I love that, Amber. And, you've always been so transparent and just candid about things. Tell me, and I love that too. I remember in the early days of Timeline Genius, I remember there was a particular sort of strong heartstring that was being pulled on when I would talk to planners that were mothers, planners that were, and we're not alienating anybody. And I think no matter who you are, if you're running a wedding planning business, you're dealing with stresses and challenges day in, week out. But yeah, just the notion of how am I managing my role as a wife and mother,
Mm-hmm.
and part of why I got into this business was because I thought there would be the freedom of time for me to be present with my children. Like, can you just tell me
Yeah.
what is that pitfall that you ran into and climbed out of, like vis-a-vis work and family? Because I feel like it's very relevant to this notion of
Yeah.
busy.
Well, I think there was a stubborn feminist moment that I was having. I can do this. I want my daughter to see this. I want my son to see this. I'm modeling something for them. I'm showing them that we can, do these things. I'm being part of the change. So that was important to me, and that all is still true. But I also had to pause and really ask myself, is all of this work really what I want to model for them? And when I would hear, I don't know, it was just something I really wanted to do. It was something I felt good at. I was good at it, and why should all of those other things in our life fall on me? Why can't I run a business? Why
Right.
can't So it was
Right.
just it was a kind of a feminist moment for me that I still have. I still possess those philosophies. But again, I have a support system, and John, my husband, is probably more. I don't even like to call him hands-on, because I don't think that's even appropriate. Like, men should just be part of it. If they're gonna have a family, like, it's their job too.
Absolutely.
But like John and I share the load. He probably does more than I do, quite frankly. We share the load, and I think that's really important, is to communicate with your partner what your needs are. So, step one, identifying time wasters. Step two, using your words. Communicate to those around you, like, hey, asking questions. Don't just share your priorities. It's not just about me and my feminist moment. Like, he has needs too. And so, like, hey, what is home life? What does a feel good home life feel like to you? What do you want our life to be like? Dream together, and then find a compromise that works for both of you. So, and we asked our kids too, like, what are, we've learned we know, like Ford, our oldest, is kind of a homebody, and so we have to schedule our lives in a way that doesn't overwhelm him. And Annie is so social, so we have to schedule our lives in a way that she doesn't feel bored at home all the time. So what's the balance? Everyone has to get something out of it, and this is so true with those that are single too. Like, you have to, maybe some of you have roommates, some of you have just communities in general that you connect with. And I think a lot of times singles, no matter their age, are thrown a lot of things and dumped a lot of things because society says, well, you have extra time, you can do it. And I'm
Right.
here to urge you to, like, have that boundary, because you get to sit around and read and do nothing if you want to. You get to go on a hike and play with your dog and do nothing if you want to. You don't have to take on everyone's extra work just because they have kids. And so I'm kind of going in different directions there from your question at this point,
Well,
but
no, that's helpful. Yeah, where my mind is, and I'll move on to other topics here. But I feel like we really hit something there, and emotionally, I can feel it, that you have a genuine sort of desire to help others learn the easy way. Like you say, I tell my kids, like, learning from me is easy. Learning from reality, learning from like life is brutal. It's
yeah,
effective. It
yeah,
really, really works. Like, when life teaches you a lesson, like, if we semi open our minds, like, it's not subtle oftentimes, but my mind almost goes, Amber, to the notion of, if the earlier you, you're talented, you're building this company, you're charging hard at it, and you're making strides, you're building this business, right? But
It
also
feels
at the
good.
time,
It's like, oh, you just like every time I would get a booking in Honeybook, you remember when they had the dollar
yeah,
signs that would rain down? Like,
yeah,
oh, so then I would work harder because I want more of that, and like just spirals out of control.
yeah. And I'm like, if if we took a time machine back to the right point in time, is like hard charging, excited, and not necessarily seeing the brick wall or the pitfall, whatever metaphor we want to use, that's up ahead. And what if you happen to have tuned into a podcast back then? What message could you have heard that might have helped you sidestep that
Yeah.
pitfall, or at least been a little bit more aware and to have had a little bit of a smoother path? Like, because there's somebody out there, Amber, you and I both know, that's in a similar, I mean, nobody has exactly your
Right.
position, but somebody's got a similar sort of setup. Like, what message could you have heard that would have been uplifting and helpful to you at
Yeah.
that point in your
I
life?
think there are two messages. I think, and I've touched on both of them already, so I'll like make them really specific to that question. I think the Jenna Kutcher message of finding your enough point is really
Yeah.
critical at the beginning stages of building a business. And if you're in the middle or you've been doing this a long time, like just hit pause and figure out what those things are.
Yeah.
And she released a book 2 or 3 years ago called "How Are You Really" or something like that. And
Mm.
you know, I I skimmed through that book quite frankly, but there's a lot of journal prompts in there that were the best date nights,
Mm. Mm.
and were a real turning point for us and really understanding some things that we had talked about for years and we would just get stuck on, and finally that like gave us the right words to hear what each other were saying. So we
Yeah.
were able to get unified on what those enough points were, and and now we're really strategic in our steps. And so when we say yes or no to things, we think about our enough points as we're saying yes or no. Does that align? And will that get us there? So that, and then I think back to the feminist thing, the way to explain this most clearly is when I had my second child, I had severe postpartum depression
Mm.
that lasted a couple years actually,
Wow.
and was pretty alarming in our home and dark. And I think I, in my feminist self, made it about me. And what I have learned in hindsight is that um, a family is only as good as their weakest link. And there was nothing I could do about that, right? Like, and I was doing stuff. We were fighting really hard, and we had doctors on board and all of that, right? But like we were doing all we could do, I guess I could say. But in that, John got really neglected.
Yeah.
I didn't think about John's needs,
Right.
and so we came up from air on that, and I wish I had, when he came home from work, I had just said hi and hello instead of just being buried in a computer. Like it takes 2 seconds to just be like, "Hey, how was your day?" And then going back to my like, "Hey, I need to finish up this email. I'll come hang out in a minute. I just want to say hi." I didn't do things like that, and I wish I hadn't, because I think that is a downfall in those of you that are in relationships. I hear that in coaching. My husband I'm always on the computer. He's always, come hang out with me. That's the first sign right there. When your husband or your partner is saying, "Hey, come hang out with me," that is the first sign. And if you're not hearing it, just be ready for the fall.
Yeah. This is a really good message, Amber. And, there's other stuff I want to talk about, so I will move on. But just to really, put a fine point on it, it is something that is a perpetual battle, I think, for all of us, for me included. Like, how to strike, because I think, it's funny. I think of Jerry Rice, who arguably the greatest receiver in the history of football. I read a book, like a sort of autobiography, and he was like, regretful of, that some of the time that he was putting in on the field. I think his wife got cancer or something. And it just really was this big aha moment of
Yeah.
like, in the same way that a wedding, there's no do-over. It's a one-way street. It's the same thing with life. Every moment of life, we don't get to do anything over. You don't get to go back and go to the kids' soccer game. You don't get to go back. But at the same time, we want to be successful and we want to put in
Yeah.
the work to do that. So really, really good messages there, I think.
I think society also thinks like, oh, we do all the hustle when we're younger so that we can, I think there's a phrase like entrepreneurship or is something around like we do all the hard work now so that we can live our life later. And that's so
It's
true.
dangerous,
But
but
don't forget, if you're listening
yeah,
to this and you're 19, 25,
right.
31, if you're
Yeah,
in that like earlier decade of like starting and building your life, like the habits that you have now will determine your 40s and 50s and 60s. And or your mindset around how you're going to protect your 40s and 50s and 60s has to start now. And maybe you are busier right now because you can be and you have the time and bandwidth and quite frankly the physical energy for it. But you have to know your enough point. You have to know at what point you're going to be willing to dial that back. And it's not just identifying your time wasters and communicating with others. It's also having a financial strategic plan and
yeah,
having the right clients and attracting the right people and having the right staff and the right tools and resources. And I think if I'm going to have a really tough love moment in this conversation to our industry, you guys are cheap. You guys have no idea what it costs to run a business. And you think you do. And you come at us as educators like, oh, your stuff's too expensive, or oh, we can't spend this money. And it's like, well, then don't run a business, quite frankly. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's going to be harder when you first start, but like this is part of running a business. Other businesses are spending tens of thousands of dollars on coaching, like hundreds of thousands of dollars on coaching. Other businesses are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on software. And we're complaining about $500. Like, get real, y'all. You have no idea.
yeah.
And so, and I'll be nice from here, but I had to say that. And I think that those are the things that are going to set you free and allow you to live your life.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, I like the way you put it, tough love, Amber. But I mean, we talked a little bit in the pre-interview, and I think it almost kind of comes down to like scarcity mindset, I think,
It does.
and kind of like trusting that, these investments, be it software, be it education, be it whatever it is that you need to really fly in life and to reach that sort of goal that you have, like you just got to have a mindset of knowing that you got to be, you got to invest in yourself.
You
You and I
do, and
have
I
to
get
do it.
it. There's a lot of junk out there, and if you've invested in that initially and you get burned, like that stinks. I really feel for that.
Absolutely.
That makes me angry, quite frankly, for our industry. I don't like that, and I wish we could flesh that out. But there are ways, and we won't talk about that now, but there are ways to vet all of that. And it's interesting. Sometimes I'll get an email like, hey, I thought it had this, and I'm like, it says like the first line of the mark, like of the checkout, says that it doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So like, are you actually researching what you're investing in? That's a question. But yeah, no, there's some junk out there that really has burned people, and that's unfortunate.
I think on the whole though, and if you're an entrepreneur and business owner, you better be investing in like your education. And I think that on the whole, I've had some investments that have varying degrees of ROI. I've had
Oh,
some
right. They're not gonna
investments
all
where
work.
the return is absurd, like just the most
Yeah.
incredible ROI that you could expect for like that amount of money that you spent. And I've had some that are like, okay, I didn't really get much out of that and I lost some money. But like on the whole, if you average it out, the
It's
dollars that
all
I've
been.
spent improving myself, educating myself, training myself are some of the highest ROI dollars, perhaps the highest ROI dollars that I spend. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, you're right. They're not gonna all be winners.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just because it's not a winner doesn't mean that it's not a great quality product that actually
Yeah.
has been pretty game changing for someone else.
But it's
So
hard
there's
to
that
really
perspective
strike out.
too.
Like it's
Yeah,
hard to like if you I mean assuming you're not just going to like buy just whatever, like you're going to do some research, you're going to read about it,
your
like
research for sure.
it's hard to invest in yourself, like, and to really crap out. It happens, but on the whole, like you got to do that, and that's a risk that we all
Well,
take to some
here's the
degree.
funny part to me. We're asking our clients to spend $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 with us, but then we look at something like $1,000. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, well, you can't ask someone to invest $5,000 in you if you've not ever invested that in yourself.
Well, and I know I love that you put the word love in what you're saying, Amber, because I mean I know that what you're saying, and I know that what I'm saying, this comes from a place of love and genuinely
Experience.
wanting. What's that?
a place of experience.
Yeah, experience and just genuinely wanting every single person that's listening to this right now, and even the ones that aren't, if you're in this industry, my hope and dream is that you thrive and that you prosper.
Yeah.
There's one other topic I want to get to, but I do want to first do a little segue to Timeline Genius, Amber. For
Yeah.
anybody that's not using Timeline Genius, if you spend any significant amount of time creating wedding day timelines or now wedding checklists, I want you to know that Timeline Genius is a platform that makes it very easy for you to create beautiful, totally customized, detailed timelines and checklists for your weddings. And, I think it's relevant because we're talking about making yourself unbusy. Well, all we do day in, day out for the last 11 years, all we've done is spend our time, energy, money, and collective talents at our company to build a tool that's going to save you time and make you look like a rock star. So just go to timelinegenius.com, watch the little 60-second teaser video. If you've got a little more time, there's a product demo, and it will change your life. So that's my plug for that.
Well, and
Um,
I'm going to add to that, Eddie. I think that, in my big, huge wedding planning process kit, of course, I have a timeline tucked in there. I would not be a quality leader for wedding planners if I didn't show them an example timeline of something that is effective and detailed and efficient. But even in that, I link Timeline Genius and say, I actually suggest you go here. And I talk about it all the time in our community. And we as planners get frustrated when a vendor reaches out and asks a question that was on the timeline we sent, or doesn't understand something that's so clearly on the timeline, and it's indicative to us that they didn't read it or whatnot. And my experience, I had one of my lead planners got married, and so I was going to do her wedding for her as a gift, obviously. So she planned it, and then we passed it off as day of. And this is why I don't believe in day of coordination, because even as a person on my team, she had, her documents were beautiful and perfect. She was a contractor, so they all got to do their documents how they wanted. But I couldn't read them quickly on the spot because I wasn't used to them. Everything was there. It was so organized, but it just wasn't how I was used to looking at stuff.
yeah.
So it was an aha moment to me that these vendors are opening up a different format every weekend, and their brains are like,
Yeah.
spaghetti in a blender on it. So of course it's easier to ask. And so so that's my big push to Timeline Genius, because even within Timeline Genius, you can customize, right? But there's some cohesion in the format that reduces that strain and tension, and I think improves those relationships.
I love that, Amber, and thank you. Yeah, you've always been like a supporter. I mean, I remember when you were a planner, and we used to talk about the platform, and always have appreciated the feedback, support, etc. There's another topic here, Amber, that and I'm watching the time fly as it always does. But I want to delve into this notion of emergency planning. Like, how do planners handle the inevitable? I mean, you knock on wood and hope it doesn't happen, but it will happen. What are some of your, what advice do you have for wedding planners around handling emergencies?
Well, I think that there's the preparedness, prevention, and response aspect. There's three components to this, and it's no secret that I have this broader concern. I've been talking about it for the last year or two. I have a concern about the general state of problem solving in our industry. I'm seeing that start to deteriorate and decline, and I think there are some real honest reasons for that. I think a lot of us that have been in this for a long time, COVID came around and it wore us out, quite frankly. And so there's maybe some feeling jaded and fatigued and apathetic has kind of entered the chat a little bit here. And that impacts problem solving skills, quite frankly,
Sure.
because problem solvers have to care to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
And then there are so many newer folks, which welcome, by the way. I think it's been so fun watching you all take off. And but my encouragement to you all is to pause and think through the problem solving needs of this industry, because I don't see it. Quite frankly, you're brilliant and you're creative and you're doing these amazing things, but when it comes to problem solving, I'm concerned. And prevention is the biggest thing. And if I were to like really hone in on anything, prevention. Okay, so like making sure our documents are so tight and so clean and templated. So that's one reason Timeline Genius is so helpful, and using tools like my wedding planning process kit and whatnot. Like those are pretty airtight. And of course, for every region and market and ideal client, those are going to have to be tweaked,
right,
and made your own.
Right.
But here's an example of problem solving. Someone will get a template and email back and like, but it doesn't have this or doesn't have that. And my response to that is like, well, it sounds like that's a regional thing, so just add it. It's a template.
Right.
Like, why are we wasting energy having this conversation? Just like add it. It's literally a template. It's to be built upon. That's a problem solving. That's a lack of problem solving moment. So, use those things and get your communication with your clients airtight. Have those boundaries, enforce those boundaries, have really clear contracts so that you can rely on them, or you can relate back to them when these things pop up. And then talk to them about the fact that there will be emergencies. Talk to them, hey, it's not if, but when. So we're going to get our mindset straight now from day one, first consult. Okay. Right. It could rain. Let's talk about it. It could tornado. Let's talk about it. There could be a fire. Let's talk about it. You could get left at the altar. Let's talk about it. So we're going to get our mindset straight on those things, and this is how we're going to handle them. So let's all agree to that right now. Other things too, like even clients going MIA and stuff, like going ahead and telling them, like, if you go MIA, this is how I'm going to respond. That's not necessarily emergency, but it really impacts planning and could create emergencies. So make sure that they know, like, first response is this, second response is this, third response, you get fired. And so that they just know this from the start, and they plan better with you, and that prevents a lot of emergencies in the first place. But ask them, I have a whole questionnaire and form in my wedding planning process kit that's, who's the person we're watching out on this wedding day? Like, who's the cousin that we're all worried about? What piece of family drama could pop up and cause a problem? How do you want me to respond if someone's trying to push their way into the getting wedding room? And then I'll list 4 ways I'm willing to respond. That's not an open-ended question. You get to check the box here. And ask all those things that, if your dress rips and your cake falls and everything's falling apart, how do you want me to respond to you? Do you want me to like comfort you? Do you want me to fix it? Do you want me to listen? And just have those relationships with your clients. These are a lot of things to go over, but I think it's important. Then I think building your network and being always prepared. I have had, I'm in Texas, tornadoes, weather that's unpredictable. There could be, we had a wedding that it was all sunshine in the radar. But what we know in Texas is it doesn't matter what's in the radar. It happens as it happens. And a tornado popped onto the radar about 3 hours before the ceremony. Oh. And we had to move the wedding to an entirely different space. And the only way I was able to do that was I just started picking up the phone and calling everybody I knew. And you know who helped me find what I needed to find? Another wedding planner. Wow. So a direct competitor saved my booty that day. Wow. So our networks and our organizations matter. I think being a part of local organizations is really important. I think, you don't have to share your secret sauce with your competitors, but man, those relationships go a long way for referrals and for things like I just shared. And so being able to call your network when someone no shows and say, hey, can you come DJ? My DJ got sick and can't come. And being willing to do that for others too. I've jumped up and said, yeah, I'll be there. And, so that's part of solving problems. That's part of the emergency, like handling emergencies, making sure you have people to call, and we can sell that to our clients too. Like, it's great that, you're doing a great job with this, but what happens on the wedding day? Like, who are you going to call? Do you have that network? Yeah. And I think there are other components of emergencies and safety that we often overlook, like, fires. And we had a planner in Refine talk about she had to evacuate a building because of a gas leak. And so what do we do in those situations? How do we know everyone got evacuated? Is there a child in the bathroom that mom thought dad had and dad thought mom had? And how do we quickly what are our plans for things like that? And so I would encourage you all in your local organizations to have a fire marshal or, an EMS chief or someone come out and speak to your organization about things like that. How can we work together? What are we held responsible for as planners in this municipality? And how are we going to get ticketed? What do we need to plan for on our timelines and our layouts? Like, have your exits on there, like label exits on your layouts, label AEDs and fire extinguishers, and make sure your vendor teams know where those things are. And we don't do that stuff, and that can save a life. That doesn't mean you're responsible for all of a sudden you have to do CPR. I'm not saying that, but just know who in the room can. Ask your couple, do you have any first responders or military in your wedding party or on your guest list? Do you have a doctor? Know who's in the room. And because we're not equipped for all emergencies, but someone in the room probably is, but we just need to know who they are. And I think having this is some people love this idea and other people hate it. I love it, or I wouldn't share it. I think we should all have a megaphone. I think we should all have a megaphone. And my philosophy on this started with sparklers, because you get out there and you got all these sparklers and you're like, hey, don't do that. And all of a sudden you're yelling and people are like, gosh, she's so mean. And if I just had a megaphone, you'd be like, hey, we're going to do this. Now I can be louder and vocal, but fun and lighthearted and make jokes. And people know I'm just communicating versus yelling at them. And because timing is so specific on that you don't have time to be soft and gentle. You just have to say it. And so megaphone helps. Well, in an emergency like the evacuation I shared, having a megaphone would help, right? Then you can stay calm and you can just communicate versus having to yell over everyone and whatnot. And so those are $20, $30, no big deal. Just throw it in your car, So just having tools like that elevate our ability to remain cool and calm and collected and confident in those situations, because they're looking at us. And if we're panicked, they're panicked. And that's even that back to the ripped wedding dress or the cake that falls. If our face is panicked, their face is panicked. But if we're like, we got this, then they can start to make a joke of it too. And that'll be the fun story that they tell about their wedding 20 years from now, even though it sounds like the worst nightmare.
I love that, Amber. And I see we're almost, out of time here, but I really love that. And I can say, after years of doing this podcast, I oftentimes ask other people, what's the defining attribute for you of the great wedding planners? And what you often hear is they're just calm and everything's handled. Yeah. And they have this energy about them that's that no matter what comes up, it's going to all be okay. And I love that we're giving some concrete strategies there to deal with the inevitable emergencies. You've been on our podcast before, so you know what my last question always is. And it is, if you, based on all of your experience, everything you've seen and learned in life and business, if you could give one piece of advice to our wedding planners that are listening right now that would help them as much as possible in moving closer to the professional dreams, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, I don't think anyone that has heard me talk before will be surprised by my answer. My answer is, when you say no to one thing, you're saying yes to another. Mm-hmm. And that can apply to, having to have a boundary with the client. That can apply to overwhelming your schedule. That can, when we say no, we can't put the cake table here. We're saying yes to, by putting it somewhere else, we won't have a congested line at the bar. Wow. It's just that simple. Give yourself permission. Saying no to one thing means saying yes to another.
I love that, Amber. What a great place to leave it. And if people want to get in touch with you, get access to your educational resources, get involved in the Refine community, can you tell them how to reach out and get involved?
Yeah. So find me over at Instagram, Refine for Wedding Planners. And then there's a link there that you can find everything else. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Amber, on behalf of our Timeline Genius community and all of our Wedding Industry Insider podcast listeners, thank you for taking time to do this. It's always a treasure and a treat. And yeah, we're grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.